10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bringing Design Closer. My name is Gerry Scullion and I'm a service designer and I'm the founder of This Is HCD and the CEO of thisisdoing.com, where we provide live online design and innovation classes, providing training for people within the design and change making space. You are in for a treat today, folks. I caught up with the one and only Joe Macleod, an all-round great thinker and leader in the space of designing end experiences. Now based in Stockholm, Joe's just released a second book titled Endineering, which focuses on the how to design these incredibly important experiences for both businesses and the planet. Joe's first book, titled Ends, was released a number of years ago and really focused on the understanding of why these systems have not been put in place. In this conversation, we flick between both mindsets, both in the spirit of Christmas that is fast approaching, and we speak about the past, present and future. What are the behaviours and the problems that are being left behind by our ancestors and elder family members. We speak about the present, where we are right now, and things that we should be doing both at a societal level but also from a change maker space. The future may seem like a faraway place, but in this conversation you realise that it's not. Joe's a remarkable thinker and I highly encourage you to purchase his books. He's an independent author, so support his work. Let's jump straight into the episode. It's a great one. Joe, it's great to have you here. I'm delighted to welcome you to Bringing Design Closer. I'm a long-time fan, first-time guest speaker to you, and excited to chat with you today. Maybe kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from today.
Oh, great. Thanks ever so much for inviting me on to the show, Gerry. And really appreciate it because you're a big podcast star in the community.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, delighted to be here. A bit of my background, I've been a designer for years. I graduated doing graphic design before the web was around. Then I was really excited about the web, so started messing around with that for a bit. Then got into mobile, done a lot of .com stuff, which was super exciting for 10 minutes, and then it all come crashing down. And but it was a really good experience. And then I ended up doing apps in my last job at Us2. I was head of design there for about 5 years, I think, which was great fun. I think one of the best jobs I've ever had, probably. And but the most recent stuff I've been doing is around consumer endings, or looking at the end of the consumer life cycle. So that's where we're at the moment.
I mean, the first book that you wrote is called Ends, and we're going to speak a little bit about that today, but you've also got a new book out called Endineering, which is a fantastic name. I'm sure it came to you in the shower or something. You're like, how did you come up with the name for Endineering?
Well, actually, somebody said something like, "Oh, who's the head of Endineering?" Then, like,
you're like, "I'll take
as
that."
a passing joke. I thought it was quite funny at the time, and it's been sort of chipping around as a thought, and it's turned from a joke. Actually, it's really good, that word, because we do need to engineer endings, I think, and take a lot more of a serious look at how we plan and design those type of things and execute them. Yeah. And also, it's a unique word, so hashtagging that and making that a thing is quite convenient online.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the first book, if anyone hasn't read it, go and buy it and read it and support Joe and his work, because it's fantastic, and it focuses mostly on the why businesses aren't designing these things, why consumers aren't thinking about these things, I guess. Is that fair to say? Is that
yeah, that's right. So when I first started looking at it, I mean, maybe if we go back before that book was written, I had a couple of experiences. One of which was this rubbish experience with a voice recognition stuff on like, I think, Orange mobile phone network, and that highlighted a real lack of endings because I was so angry with it. I couldn't end it emotionally. And then I set this sort of silly project looking back on it, which was about waste and rubbish in the world for a load of students at St Martin's in London. And then they all came back with more stuff. And, like a mug with don't waste things or avoid rubbish. And yet we created more
stuff.
Rubbish. And it was just sort of this clarifying moment of this gap. And what was revealed is basically a hole. And I didn't have anything to put in that hole in terms of thought. I had no vocabulary. I thought about, we don't design endings. And this hole stayed with me for years, actually, decades. I became quite fascinated with endings after that. And then the first book really looked into that hole and looked at why don't we consider endings in our broader life, that sort of started to move towards consumer experiences. And that first book was the why, and that goes right back in history to the sort of Protestant uprising, the plague, and it frames how consumerism came about through this sort of desecularized Protestant worldview of endings, and how I'm not religious, but I'm not to sort of offend any religion or something. But it's just this observation around the relationship with death, heaven, etc., and how that has been utilized in the build-up of the Industrial Revolution and consumerism more generally. Let's
break that down a little bit, Joe, because it's something that I'm interested in as well. My wife is Protestant, I'm Catholic.
Right.
And it's become a thing, I guess, we've been together for nearly 16 years. So it's not something we've just spoken about going, hey, did you know that you're going to die? I'm going to die too. But I'm a little bit more planned out and kind of like, I know where I'd like to be buried and so forth. But what are the things that you found? Like you mentioned the Industrial Revolution. Let's break that down. Tell me what you mean.
So the Industrial Revolution is that in Northern Europe, it essentially is sort of emerged from Northern Europe. Northern Europe at the time was predominantly Protestant. And looking at the challenges that those two groups had over centuries previously. So if you just look on the plain level, in the Protestant worldview, you don't really get a chance to renounce sin or adjust and align towards that death, the end of life and death. So you pretty much turn up at the pearly gates, as it were, and you're judged. And in the Catholic religion, you can adjust and move and renounce sin and stuff. So there's a different relationship there with about endings in the Catholic sort of religion, I think. Talk a lot more about death in an open way, but the Protestants tended to shove that down a lot more emotionally.
That's definitely true. I know, because talking about wakes, I like my wife hasn't experienced a wake, and to me, without sounding too morbid, but there's nothing better than a good wake, because you actually get together with people that you haven't seen for a long time, and in a really morbid way, it's actually quite a fun time, and it's obviously it's sort of underlying sadness.
It's a powerful reflective tool, isn't it? That
really,
I think many and going back to the religious thing again, Martin Luther, when the Protestants first came about, he removed fasting from the religious calendar. Now I believe in the Catholic religion it's not organised as explicitly now, but it wasn't removed till a lot later on. So Martin Luther removed that before the Industrial Revolution. So you've removed this. Imagine that tool, how powerful that would be, to have a tool that says, remove yourself from the abundance of life and now reflect upon how lucky you are. Yeah. If in a consumer context, that would be incredibly powerful. But that was removed in the sort of the area where the Industrial Revolution started to emerge.
That's really interesting, because that whole power of reflection is kind of where we're at after COP26 and stuff, where we need to take a step back, and readjust.
Exactly, and when we don't build in these sort of moments of reflection at the offboarding and ending of consumption, then we have no measure of how we resolve the consequences of consumption. So we're quite muted in terms of our ability to really judge that and measure that, and so there's a big sort of psychological problem in that.
So you think that's been carried across over centuries into where we're at now at the moment, the whole kind of the inability to reflect, consumer fatigue?
Yeah, and what we've done, what we've tended to do over like centuries, this is, so it's really hard for us to grapple with it now. In my view, we've all have this psychosis in us that is a consumer self and a civil self. So on one hand, I'm incredibly sophisticated at valuing, understanding, measuring an object in terms of purchase, or a consumer experience in terms of purchase and usage. So we all have a very sophisticated ability to measure that. But at offboarding, I then resort to my civil self, which has an overwhelming task to try and value the end of product life. So I'm the one in my civil self, that half of me, is concerned about the environment, is worried about how to recycle, has all of these other values and other concerns. And these two individuals never get really an opportunity to come together inside the consumer life cycle. So, because the consumer life cycle ends very abruptly, emotionlessly, and there's an enormous separation between the usage experience and the end experience.
And like that measurement piece is something that, due to the inanimate object that is usually sitting in a kitchen or something like that's what I'm sort of picturing it at the moment, is never really measured post-purchase.
No.
It just sits there dormant, and they kind of go like, they fell for it. Who knew that you needed 16 kind of different dials on a wash machine or a dryer or a fridge or refrigerator, whatever it was. So where do you have any insights in terms of where they're at with?
Yeah, I mean, with measuring's a really good way to look through this lens. So as a consumer, I am measured in terms of usage and targeting in ever such complicated ways. And I understand and can measure myself in those terms. I've got X amount of money. I've got X amount of these types of things. I've got X amount of followers. I've got X amount. So I'm measuring and valuing myself in the consumer world all the time.
Yeah.
In terms of usage, understanding what I'm valued at, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to the end of the consumer life cycle, a lot of the measuring tools drop off and we resort to scientific measuring devices. So if you've ever tried to measure your carbon impact, you can see how complicated, non-user-centric that is to apply a scientific, very complicated measuring device to the impact you're making as a consumer. And if we can't measure these things as a consumer-centric way, then we're never going to get the consumer to reflect about that ending, or even improve. What's that saying? That if you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. We can speak a little bit more about why, but one of the things that I was thinking about in the lead up to this conversation is it's been a couple of years since you released that first book. If you had the chance to go back and add something to it now, based on what you've learned over the last number of years and where we're currently at, what would you add to the book?
Well, for starters, I've realised writing about digital doesn't last very long. So there's a whole digital chapter there, which is very out of date, I think, now, and I would revisit that, and certainly maybe not make so many statements about digital because they change so quickly. Other aspects of it, I think, I'm very proud of the book in terms of how it takes that passage through history and psychology and sort of philosophy. I never really wanted to write a book, really. I'm quite dyslexic and it's really not much fun writing. So it's not like, oh, the joy of writing. That's not me. It's like, oh my God, writing. So it was quite a mountain to climb, and so glad I'd done it. Really.
Yeah, and now you've done it twice.
Yeah, what an idiot.
You walked into the wall twice.
Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know and don't follow Joe lives in Stockholm in Sweden now.
Yeah.
So you've got the power, like I do, to compare different cultures and stuff. Me living in Australia for, 13, 14 years, and coming back, and I'm now in this eternal conflict state where I'm like, comparing the two, never particularly happy nearly all the time. How does Sweden compare to where you originally brought up?
From the UK? Oh, well, on many different levels. I don't know about in terms of endings and consumption.
Because it's a secular society, isn't it? Sweden's secular.
Well, yes, it is secular. I mean, the UK's fairly secular as well. The separation between the church and stuff sometimes blurs a bit more in the UK. I think there's a lot more
and the monarchy.
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that. But I think because Sweden's a smaller country, their language is obviously far more unique than English, which is incredibly dominant. I just as an English-speaking person coming here, you forget how privileged you are speaking English going around the world, and almost everyone here speaks absolutely perfect English, and it is embarrassing to think how few people in the UK speak another language. And I find it humbling how this culture grapples with having this very dominant language everywhere. And for every other country as well around Europe.
Yeah, it is definitely like I felt that. Being Irish, of course, we speak English. Thanks for that, Joe. We won't go down that road though. But look, when I was looking at ends and endineering, and I was chatting to you beforehand about splitting maybe the conversation up into three different parts, like the past, present, and future.
Right.
And the past behaviours that I guess my parents and my ancestors and stuff, they were involved with buying all these things. We've inherited this problem now that we've kind of like, how do we kind of clean up the mess? So in terms of where we're at right now, it's 2021, just before Christmas. What does that look like? How big is this problem?
I think this problem's absolutely gigantic, and it is very frustrating when you look back in the history of grappling with all sorts of pollutions and climate change. I mean, we're at 26 of COP now. COP started in, I think, 72, so it's been going ever since I was born. And I think that gives you a perspective of how little we really grappled with it.
Or progress.
Knowing full well that there's a problem with it for many decades.
Yeah.
But when I think about the past, present, and future, I think, we've got to grapple with this right now. I hear people saying, I think the next generation are the ones to do it. And that's when I hear people say that, I think, what, are we going to breed our way out of this? I think, it's going to be fuck our way to the future so we can have more kids. They'll deal with it. Yeah. And that really can't be done. We've got to deal with it right away in this
generation. If anything, we need less people.
Next few years.
Can I ask a question? And it's going to seem like such a stupid question, but what is the problem? Do we know the problem?
Well, overconsumption is a massive problem on lots of levels. I mean, climate change is definitely on the agenda, but it's not the only thing that's damaging the environment. I mean, from my point of view, I look at this through the lens of consumerism and design and creating consumer experiences. And I look at this and see how many years we've gone without considering rebalancing that onboarding experience.
Yeah. And
if we can't do that for the consumer to get them to engage in the issues, I mean, we talk a lot about behavior change, but it feels fairly barren if we can't work out what is behavior change in terms of executing that in the consumer experience. Because we can talk all we want about we've got to change our behavior and reduce our carbon footprint. What does that mean to the consumer? We're still sending consumer goods like there's no problems at all. So we've got to start making behavior change part of that consumer experience. And I believe that is about making endings more responsible, reflective, and purposeful.
There's just on that topic, there's a responsibility at the consumer level. There's a huge responsibility on the business level, to actually walk the walk and talk the talk. There was a scenario here where I was back and forth with a supermarket chain in Ireland called Super Value. I'm going to name them. I don't really care.
Yeah.
So I did my shopping online. We're still kind of very much COVID, risk adverse here. And the shopping came in and there was 12 bottles of 7-Up Cherry for free in the thing. And I'm like, for free. Okay. So, and of course there were,
just in case the first bottle didn't really grab you, you're going to have another one to really push you into the
the cherry one. Yeah. 7-Up Cherry as well. I'm not even into cherries, and they had beautiful kind of for free plastic label on the top of it. And I put them out on the counter in the kitchen, and I went mad. I was like, suddenly I've inherited this problem. I'm like, how am I going? They're not going to come back and pick up these 12 bottles of free 7-Up cherry. I'm like, no one's going to want them. Okay, so I've inherited this literally shit pile, and I'm like, I could pour it down the sink, but then I've got the plastic, and I'm like, anyone who knows me knows I've been sitting there kind of looking at them for a few minutes, kind of going, and what'll I do? So I did what everyone else and probably listens to the podcast. I hit them up on Twitter, and I'm like, seriously, is this how you guys, support the initiatives that you talk about, like being sustainable and all that kind of stuff? By how many of these orders are you doing a week? You're probably doing about 15,000-20,000 in a week. Are you giving 11 or 12 bottles to them as well? And I'm not stupid. I know you're also getting money from probably Coca-Cola for giving these out. Yeah. So walk the walk. But anyway, I'm on a bit of a mini rant about this, and eventually I got a hold of the store manager, and they said, "Oh, we'll send somebody down to pick them up." And I go, "But you need to give me my promise that you're not just going to throw them into another bag." I said, "You need to have some sort of social responsibility and allow people to opt in or opt out and say, I don't want this stuff, and I never want any free stuff because I'm not going to use it." And they were like, "Oh yeah, sure. 4 weeks later, I got another 4 bottles.
4 bottles of cherry
7-Up again. Back on Twitter, and I'm like, this is what I mean. Like, it's repetitive, and I don't believe businesses have even come to the table to think about these things. It's a PR stunt for them to talk about sustainability, and it's a tough one because we need them to come to the table as probably quicker to help guide the consumer behaviors to change.
I sometimes think that we do blame businesses a lot. Many businesses are trying to do stuff, but I think a lot of the time we just aren't talking about the same issues in the right way. I used to work at Nokia for years, and people used to talk about, and some businesses do build in obsolescence into their devices. But the real concern for me wasn't that. I mean, it would be great if businesses did talk about endings in terms of obsolescence, because maybe they would plan in how to rectify that or deal with it better. But what was really worrying is that all the time I was at Nokia, we'd talk about all sorts of aspects of onboarding and usage and distributing, and never had a conversation about how do we get all this stuff back and process it into new things. And very few companies do that. I mean, like, for example, Apple they'll take your phone back and they'll take it to bits and use those things, and they've got quite a good scheme. But that's a very rich, expensive company doing stuff like that, and they're maybe doing good in that sense. I mean, I've got other criticisms of them, but maybe that's a good thing. But loads of companies aren't even thinking about ending. No. So, like, they're thinking about promotion and that onboarding experience. So, like, the promotion of shoving 12 bottles, how many in all? 16 12. Bottles of cherry Coke.
Oh, 16 in total, yeah. But none of it passed my lips. And funny, when the delivery guy came back the second time, he knew me. And he was like, "Oh, here he is." And I'm like, there better not be anything in those bags. I said, apart from what I paid for. Like, I'm a complete and utter anomaly. He's like, "I can't believe you don't want any free stuff."
Yeah.
And I go,
especially cherry.
Even he said, I wouldn't drink it. And I'm like, right, okay.
It's interesting though, isn't it, really, the burden you've been given. If you went around to do all that to customers of anything almost and gave them something which was just a massive burden to them.
Yeah.
You're going to get really sugar high on this. Although it's free, you're going to get a sugar high, then a sugar crash, and then you've got a load of plastic to process, and
it's just hasn't been thought out. Someone from Coca-Cola goes, "Hey, we've got a new flavor we want to push out to the consumers. Maybe we'll just give it to them for free to get them hooked." And I mean, they're giving it to the wrong person. I am definitely one of the worst customers to be meeting at the door, because I'm like, what's this? But it's interesting. It's just one of those anecdotal stories I wanted to throw out there.
I think examples, onboarding, offboarding, and the grappling your consumer self and civil self are having. I mean, that's sort of revealed in that, I think.
Yeah. They did apologize, and they said, like, it didn't happen again. But then yet again, nothing has changed in the system that when you go to order your food, I still was given free coffee then a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, look, take this back. I don't want this stuff. I'd rather use my own ethically sourced coffee. And I know I sound like a complete snob when I say this stuff, but it's how I live my life. I only want to consume the stuff that I buy. I don't want people to be bringing me stuff that is inevitably going to probably end up in the bin.
Yeah.
But so look, we're looking at the past stuff, and we've identified it's a huge problem. Okay, so do you know of anything there that you can add to how we're processing that past stuff? I know when you're in Dundee, you mentioned there to me with the Design Council.
Well, I think with the past stuff, I doing a really deep historical look at why we do this instead of, I think we often look back at like a business and blame them, and we only look back like a few years, like this company done this in such and such a year, when actually we never look really back at how our society has been framed sociologically around the wider consumer experience, and that doesn't come under the spotlight as much, because I think we do look into far too close a lens. I mean, was it David Attenborough was talking about how democracy really makes it hard to deal with long-term impacts like climate change, because no one's in power long enough to really take responsibility to see the impact or take the responsibility of changing it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, like, you know. But fast forward, I feel like there's a movie, isn't it? There, the Past, Present, Future, a Christmas movie. So I feel like we're probably doing a Christmas themed podcast here, folks. What's that one called?
It will come out, I guess, in a couple of weeks, won't it? December, just when the shopping's on.
Yeah.
Actually, we could talk about that for a bit.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it now, because the present, where we're currently at, we're approaching Christmas. We've already mentioned the conflict and personal conflict as well, like, you know, in terms of my own household, what Christmas looks like for the kids. Yeah. If you want to take action this Christmas, Joe, you know, what would you say to people out there?
Well, I have been thinking about doing a Christmas book for a few years now.
I thought you were going to say a Christmas song.
No, a Christmas book that is just like, how does it end? But it's photographed really beautifully with really lush, oversaturated images. How does it end? And it's like really cool toys, like mixers,
sad toys,
the sort of things that you might buy at Christmas, photographed in great ways. And then all it's about is like, the average lifespan of this product is X amount of time, after which it could be dismantled in an appropriate way. But these types of things in this product are really hard to recycle. So it's sort of like the worst gift you could give at Christmas, because it's such a horrible, soured, and it will ruin everyone's Christmas who's just received a lovely, cool toy or polyester jumper.
I mean, how do you handle the whole kind of Santa Claus thing and kind of family kind of giving, you know, gifts that are like dolls and all this? I'm a big fan of Christmas. I'm not Scrooge here. I want to celebrate and spoil my kids, but how do you handle that?
There's obviously some cliches I could talk about. You know, it's the spirit of it. And when I think about Christmas on a personal level, it's been, you know, really quite drunk mid-afternoon looking at a really nice twinkly lights around the, you know, and really warm, overly warm, because I'm burning up loads of carbon in an
Quality Street, EastEnders.
Yeah, something like that. But and I think I'm a parent of 2 kids. I remember feeling super anxious about the amount of gifts that they would get. Not the amount, because like, stop, they've had enough. It was more like this, you know, another sick toy that I have no idea how it's dismantled or what type of plastic that is or what the metal is in this. And it makes you incredibly anxious, doesn't it? And if we're talking about the past, present and future, you're sort of looking at the next generation playing with something which is probably going to outlive them in terms of landfill, like plastic's like 300 years or something in landfill, can't it? And then and you are doing this to instantly gratify yourself as a good parent by giving it to them. So there's all sorts of conflicts about past, present, and future there.
It's a tough one. I don't know how to approach it myself. I just try what we're doing this year, and truthfully, we're asking the family members.
The kids don't listen to this podcast, do they, Gerry? They're not. You're not going to spoil their Christmas presents.
No, they definitely don't listen to This Is HCD. Yeah. They know that I do something with like a radio kind of thing, but they definitely don't listen to it. They might listen to it in the future.
Kids are listening, because we don't want to accidentally reveal about Santa Claus.
yeah, well, Santa Claus exists. He does exist, and we're going to see him now in 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yes.
But I do kind of go, is that a plastic toy that you're giving the kids? Is that where did you source that? Did you buy that on Amazon? That would have been coming over on an airplane, and that would have been a high CO2 emission there. So you probably want to rethink how you're purchasing this. You should be purchasing local. And they're like, get out. But in terms of like, we were asking the parents and the family members to give money, and we're buying one present as opposed to 50.
Yeah.
And that's one way to approach it, I guess, is rethinking about the volume and in terms of purchasing quality over quantity. In terms of the present stuff that we currently have, what are the behaviors that you're seeing that are repeating that we could probably do a little bit more around trying to change? Like, for instance, batteries. I think we spoke about this before, around AA and AAA batteries. What should people do with those things? Because definitely Christmas time is battery heaven.
Batteries aren't too bad because they're actually fairly simple and they're high value inside them as well. So with lithiums, like companies will definitely be up for like reprocessing them and selling the separate bits of metal. The real things you got to watch out for, and just in the last 10 years, I've seen so much very cheap electronic products. So any Bluetooth speaker, like, so where's it come from? Who's made it? Who's going to dismantle that when the time comes? So I could probably send all my Apple gear back to Apple and be fairly confident they might dismantle it and pull out bits and bobs from it. But you're not going to get that with most Bluetooth head speakers. Your earphone, if you use like headphones with cables, they last so little time, and the componentry in it is so cheap that it's not worth dismantling that is like quite costly for whoever dismantles it. And all of these things are these are the really big problem things. E-waste is a gigantic issue.
I was actually speaking to Gerry McGovern about this. Gerry's a good friend of the podcast. He has Worldwide Waste, his podcast. And we were talking about these things, and the story came about, we have a toaster and a kettle downstairs, that is now, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and it was given to us when we were getting married and stuff from DeLonghi. My wife did some work for DeLonghi, and I was like, wow, it looks like a really kind of fancy kettle and toaster. Where am I going with this, Gerry? The value of those combined is about $350,
Wow.
And we didn't pay for them, folks. But they've never once given us any problems. I mean, 9 years, like, whereas before that, when we lived in Australia, we were going cheap. And we were going to Target and we were buying a toaster and a kettle. And we went through maybe about 5 or 6 of them in a couple of years. They just burnt out and they went into the bin and moved on. How do you think the kind of the principles of ownership, like I own this thing versus the cost, because $350, let's be honest, it's outside of the reach for most people.
I think it becomes quite quickly it turns into a class wealth issue. So when you look at some of the issues that we've got in the world and the privilege of being able to make choices beyond those issues. So if I think about the ease of which it is, if you've got money to purchase the right type of fruit and vegetables, organic or sourced, or this type of that and this type of this, and this is coming from here, etc., etc. And so in the food market, you're ever so privileged, and the rich have that choice. But many people, the vast majority of the world, don't have a choice at all about where they get their goods from, and they have to get the most
what they can afford,
immediate, what they can afford, etc. And the same thing happens with other goods. So it's easy for me to talk about like having Apple products and what a Ponzi rich guy like talking about having
two
Apple
white dudes
products
talking
and
about
I can
Apple
like get them
products,
recycled. But if you have a low end laptop that you're having to do work on, then people don't have a choice. And this goes really deep. If you look through the lens, like if I think about endings and identity in terms of people having an identity, if onboarding, my identity as a rich Westerner in consuming all sorts of things is layered in very, very thick way. So I have an identity as a as a voting member of the public because I live in a rich country which has democracy, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
But underneath that, loads of these things are consumer driven. So I have an identity of a purchasing power. I have loyalty cards. I have an identity on this social media platform, etc., etc. So all of these identities are very layered.
Mm.
But if then at offboarding and you think about your identity being removed very quickly, so identity ownership is wrapped up in that, loads of laws around ownership. When I purchase something at offboarding, if I throw it in the bin, it immediately gets relinquished to my identity, and it is there that then the state and the municipal company's problem because it is waste. And that also happens in terms of me making an impact on the world. That waste is going to get then shipped downstream off border into countries that are going to put up with processing it with people who are very lowly paid. The UN reckon there's about 1 billion people on Earth that haven't got an identity to speak of. So that is a shocking number. And those are the people who are putting up with the type of
labor
impact of my consumption as a rich Westerner with many layers of identity who's working in democracy, etc.
That is what I would call a wicked problem.
It's a massive injustice. And I think you've got to think about that as a consumer. The stuff that I do is impacting people who are faceless.
And it's that invisibility though, isn't it, Joe? It's you can't see that. It's like when you buy a toaster, at some point it's an angel, but at some point it's going to be a devil.
Yeah.
And it's that shift. The twilight stage between the two worlds is kind of like that's the problem space that we need to understand. But just going back to the ownership piece.
Yeah.
Gerry's point when I spoke to him was if we remodel the ownership framing and break apart that in terms of how you own things, and like I don't know about you, but in Ireland in the 70s and 80s, leasing things was hugely popular. You lease your fridge, and then when it comes term, it has another life and so forth. People don't seem to want to do that anymore. Like if we broke apart that toaster and kettle combo at $350 and it was split over like whatever 9 years, because that's expected lifespan, it's 10 cents or something a week, or I don't know what it would be. I'm used to some maths. People are throwing their eyes up to heaven with Gerry's maths, but anyway.
And I agree that I think that has gone away for a bit. I remember like radio rentals in the UK. I think my parents had a TV set. In fact, I remember it broke, and my dad was a bit of a handy man with electronics, and so he took the TV apart and to try and mend it, and he put it back together. The nation holds its breath. He put it back together again, and anyway, radio rentals came round, and the Macleods had the TV scattered across the floor, and radio rentals came round to pick it up, saying it's not working. And because I was like only a kid, I was sort of really proud of my dad doing
one part's in the kitchen.
Incredible achievement of breaking the TV to bits and then putting it back together again. And I said to the man, like, my dad's very clever, He took that TV all to bits and put it back together again.
Well, he was doing a favour, wasn't he? He was breaking it apart for people to recycle it,
Yeah.
And you said to Radio Ends, one day I'm gonna write a book about this.
But going back to the ownership piece, and I think there were, just going, and also a bit about the present and the future. We don't have to go back far to see what we weren't, the damage that we are doing now. So it's only been in the last sort of 30, 40 years that we've been just upping the damage.
Yeah. And
you go back and there was like better options in terms of rental. But I think there's a lot of companies who are moving towards that rental market for all sorts of goods now. And you see all sorts of companies moving towards rental. And that's going to be so much better. And just in terms of endings, the rental relationship is so much easier at the offboarding, because that company's going to take that material back and put it back into, dismantle it, process it in their own place. Not
and the strength in numbers.
Offshore.
Huge strength in numbers. Like a company at Radio Rentals now will have maybe 1 million fridges, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to do a deal with LG who are going to look after it. It strengthens the relationship and strengthens the likelihood of it being taken seriously, as opposed to one family in Croydon who's looking to get their fridge redone.
And absolutely, and I think with IoT, that's going to help as well. I mean, people are anxious about it on many levels, quite rightly, with security, but the beyond that, it's going to enable a lot of companies to recognize improvements in their products and errors in their products. A lot of the time, these companies are just shipping stuff and leaving it in people's homes for 20 odd years until they get a new one and someone else deals with it. But now it's going to be a lot harder for them to not emotionally, justifiably do that.
Yeah. So with the present stuff, we're having these meaningful conversations. I know you're doing an awful lot of work trying to get the word out there about the importance of designing ends, which brings us to the future state, which I guess is the service designers, user experience designers, content designers, whoever's listened to this podcast, you're a change maker most likely. What do you say to them about leading those conversations in your organizations, about selling in the importance of rethinking or just thinking about designing ends?
So culturally in businesses, we have a massive aversion to ending. So when I go into any business, they are almost blind to it. So on some levels, I often start with my wedding and my marriage.
As you do.
Yeah, I say I'm married. There's only two ways out of that: death or divorce. How many ways have you really thought about how your product ends? And a lot of companies haven't thought about any of them. They're sort of shipping these things into the lap of a customer and never think about the ending. So the first big cultural jump is like trying to have that conversation, and that's no small thing. So in the book, there's one chapter which is just about selling it into the business and is the business benefits of that, and that can go through all sorts of things. So it's in terms of legislation, it's in terms of benefits to your bottom line. So a lot of customers will be delighted that there is an end in mind. Customers feel more comfortable about committing to a business that has an offboarding thing. I think there's a phrase about people like going on the on ramp if they can see an off ramp, as it were.
Yeah, they know where you're going.
So that increases your thing. People are more trusting of businesses that have got a better ending instead of trapping people in. So if you're doing long term sort of if you're doing contracts that have really punitive early release clauses, which is stacks of different companies, cable companies, phone companies, etc. There's a load of stuff in there about why that isn't going to work for you in terms of customer satisfaction. Yeah. So there's a lot of companies that have alternatives of that. They're getting better satisfaction rates from their customers instead of I'm entrapped in this company relationship. So that goes on. There's a whole chapter about how you can do business benefits and start those conversations internally.
You can, if you want to start the conversation off, you can just share this podcast around, I guess, to start the conversation. And then I know you're offering training, Joe, around engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
This book is closer to the how, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So the first book was the why. This book is the how. And it goes through all sorts of how to do it. So the reasons to do it, as I was just talking about in terms of a business sense. It takes you through the characteristics of different types of endings your customers experience and how to design and improve those. And it also talks about the phases, the common phases that the customer goes through. So you can start designing for that time lapse between the first inklings of the customer wanting to leave to making sure they've really enjoyed that offboarding experience and they get into a really happy sort of place at the rebirth.
Joe, we're coming towards the end of the episode, okay?
Everything ends, Gerry.
We're going to have a smooth offboarding here.
Yeah.
Look, we've already spoken about Joe Macleod doing a meetup with one of the chapters in This Is Hate City around the world. There's a couple of people in the community kind of going, we'll take Joe. And I'm like, no, we'll take Joe. So there might be a combo of chapters looking to do something with Joe. So sign up to the newsletter. In the show notes, folks, if you want to hear about the Joe Macleod meetup, so you can actually ask Joe questions and so forth. One of the most meaningful books that I've come across in the last some years is Ends, and I haven't read Endineering yet, but I will be getting it in the next couple of weeks. So sign up, buy the book. support Joe, and you be doing some good for the world, hopefully. Joe, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those platforms. You can go to the and.co website, which has all of the stuff I'm doing on there, and you can get in touch through that. And yeah, please reach out. I'm also I do free gigs for education. So if you're a student and you want me to talk at your university, college, I do a 1 hour session online, half an hour talk and half an hour Q&A. Happy to do that anywhere on earth. And if you're a business wanting to talk about this a bit more and investigate it a bit more, I do loads of different models
Options.
and engagements around that. So get in touch. Let's design better endings.
Yeah, nice. Joe, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Gerry. And thanks ever so much for having me on the podcast. It's been such good fun.
Anytime. Can't wait for you to come back, Joe. So there you have it. That's all for this episode of Bringing Design Closer. If you like this episode, feel free to visit thisishcd.com, where you can access our back catalogue of over 100 episodes, with episodes related to service design, product management, design research, and much, much more. Now, if you're interested in design and innovation training, feel free to check out our business, thisisdoing.com, where you can join online classrooms and learn from the world's best design and innovation leaders. Join the This Is HCD newsletter, where you'll receive updates from the network, and also, if you're interested, apply to join the Slack community on thisishcd.com. Stay safe, and until next time, take care.